This is Imam Muntadar City. It's a shanty town in west central Baghdad.
This house over here is made out of old swamp coolers, basically old air conditioning parts.
120 families live here, but not by choice. They built these homes from whatever rubble they could find. An old orange drink box makes a new window.
We brought all of our kids and the women of our household here. We were threatened with guns and they threw us out of our home.
In Baghdad, families live in a Shia neighborhood or in a Sunni neighborhood. There's not much mixing allowed.
We were Shiites living in that area.
In 2006 and still today, armed thugs have been systematically kicking people out of their own homes.
I have 6 children.
For Bushra Nehma and her neighbors, it's forced homelessness just because they hang a picture of the Shia Imam Hussein on their walls.
We were forced at the barrel of a gun to get out. Of course, it's not the ideal situation, but what are we supposed to do? We have nothing else.
It's estimated 250,000 Iraqis live just like this just here in Baghdad, triple that throughout the entire country. That's children, men and women living with these electrical lines tapping illegally into the city grid and water lines tapping illegally. The sewage just runs out in the street. The garbage is fed to the livestock here. As far as slums go around the world, this is about as bad as it gets.
For children and for anybody to have open sewage like this is just a huge health risk.
That's Dan Legenkamp. He works for the U.S. Embassy here in Baghdad, helping people in squatter camps like this. They run into all sorts of problems, like health issues.
He has indigestion, stomach problems.
The U.S. military is leaving, but every day, more and more people like Daniel, civilians, arrive in Iraq. They're here to stabilize the country, clean up the mess left behind by Saddam, Al-Qaeda, and the sectarian thugs who kicked Miss Bushra and her kids out of their home.
What typically we like to do is not only meet the village leader, but meet people from all different ranges in sort of the economic structure here.
It's a struggle to keep kids healthy and fed and the leaky mud roof from collapsing.
And so you can see down here, they've received a UNHCR tarp on the ground.
Last year, the U.S. Embassy spent $200 million to help these people who can't go home.
Some people tried to go back and they were killed. I have the right to stay here. This is my right.
Well, technically, the land is owned by the Iraqi government. Any day now, the police could arrive with orders to kick everyone out and flatten Imam Muntadar City.
We have no choice. There's no other choice. We don't have anywhere else to go.
The swords of Qudusiyya were put up by Saddam Hussein in the 80s to commemorate the Iran-Iraq War. This is a remaining relic of the past in a country that's still trying to decide its future. But how do you come out of basically the Dark Ages, held down by a tyrant dictator for a generation, and suddenly become a free and open democracy? It's not easy, but this is the story we're telling here in the next hour. I'm Dave Malkoff, and this is Assignment Iraq.
We get a little walk. We couldn't get our MRAPs in there.
At the end of a dusty path here in Samawa, Iraq, nothing short of a revolution is beginning. And this is Muthana TV.
Through Saddam's time, it was only one TV station.
Just one network, and this 20,000-watt transmitter is only here to rebroadcast President Saddam's propaganda.
And now we have more than 10 or 15 Iraqi channels.
Saeed Jassim is the station manager here at the Muthana al-Iraqiyya station.
A local health program.
Similar to PBS, this public broadcasting station is now free to broadcast basically whatever they want. But this is still Iraq.
We called Studio Sabri.
Mr. Sabri's photo hangs in Mr. Saeed's office. Al-Qaeda kidnappers made the previous station manager disappear.
Actually, they want to destroy life in this country.
A wall of videotapes archive all the stories this one station has been able to tell since the fall of Saddam. For instance,
the assassination of the governor.
Muhammad Ali al-Hassani was the governor of Muthana province. And 3 years ago, as his motorcade passed through the neighborhoods here in Samawa, a roadside bomb tore through his armored Land Cruiser.
It was targeted against him personally.
Though there has been some progress here.
One of the happy reports is the handover of the security from the U.S. Army to the Iraqi Army and Iraqi police.
Now they've got a new satellite truck and the power's on.
Through focusing on the shining changes in this country.
They hope to bring Iraq into the light. one newscast at a time.
What does the eye mean? It means keep your eye for the events.
Think about it. Here's a guy who has, basically the same job that I have, putting news on TV every day. But I don't have to worry about someone putting a sticky bomb underneath my car just because I'm reporting the news. But the violence here affects every single person in some way. After the break,
blood is cheaper than water in Baghdad.
the fears and the hopes for this country after the American troops leave, which is soon. Simon Iraq continues in a moment.
We're in downtown Nasiriyah.
Where it's a summer Muslim holiday, birthday cake for the Shia Imam called El Mehdi. Here at the amusement park,
My family.
This is my son.
My wife.
just pick a random family.
I am assistant prof.
Professor Nadeem, for example, teaches at the local technical college and knows things are so much better here than they used to be, even just 3 years ago. You'll find Iraqis everywhere focusing on the future. A better life for their kids, freedom, and a government that works. Now, you've heard the American military is leaving. That's true, but the diplomats are staying, including this group from something called the Provincial Reconstruction Team, or PRT. They're a division of the U.S. State Department, and they're here to help the Iraqis provide for themselves, long after Saddam and long after the war.
We love the Americans, and we hope that they are prosperous.
Amazing how safe I feel out here, although I am wearing a protective vest underneath my shirt. The American military will not do this. They will not come out to an amusement park. We had to come out here with the PRT's private security.
There are still people here that don't like us.
But as a rule, an American military presence is generally no longer needed or accepted around amusement parks. Our linguist Nabil Moonla and security specialist Steve Tucker
I've been in Nasiriyah for 4 years. I've never seen that.
were the first to notice her, the girl in the short skirt. Now, look at all the women around here, and then back to her.
Looks like things are changing.
People are getting out of their shells, and they're realizing that there is freedom.
Freedom to wear what you want to wear. Now, at first, sure, I thought it was just guy talk, everyone just blown away by this girl in the short skirt. But I came to realize that her dress represented a fundamental shift in the conservative culture here in Nasiriyah. Just a few years ago, she would have been in big trouble wearing something like that. Still, not everyone sees such a progressive future.
Inshallah.
God willing, he says, Iraq's worst days are behind us. But it's easy to feel like an outsider walking these streets, trying to get a feel of how the U.S. efforts are playing out here in southern Iraq.
Gradually, things are improving. Security is very good, except for the government is not being formed fast enough.
At the ice cream shop,
Fustuqa means pistachio.
you'll get a second opinion. This country runs on small generators. State-run power plants are in a constant state of rolling blackouts.
They need to take care and fix the electricity in Iraq.
It's a major issue with no easy fix.
These are your best curtains here?
Yes, these are the best curtains, different colors.
Sad Habib moved here from Baghdad to sell curtains and escape the violence.
We were hoping that after the Americans liberated us, that they would do lots of infrastructure projects, but we have not really seen much going on.
To be fair, Americans and Italians have built schools and clinics and seen solid results here.
Several things. Chief of Police is really in very much control now than the previous Chief of Police.
But nobody knows how well he'll function after the U.S. military support leaves.
When they finally leave completely, the Tigris and Afritis are going to be full of blood.
Ultimately, the people of Iraq will decide their own fate in this experiment with Iraqi democracy and free market. How has business been here?
It will only be better business if the Americans, before they left, made sure that they have the right people in government and that they cut off the ones that are robbing us.
Right now, there are only 50,000 American troops in the entire country of Iraq, maybe less by the time you see this. And by New Year's Day 2012, that number will be down to 0. That is the agreement that the U.S. signed with the new Iraqi government. So, how is that new democracy thing doing? To answer that question, we really had to meet with the people who run the local provincial governments here. Downtown Baghdad, the beginning of the week.
This is Kerch side. They call it Kerch.
We're in up-armored SUVs moving through what seems like a free-for-all, no-rules traffic jam. Finally, we get to our destination.
Okay, guys, so what's Mary doing?
Now, what appears to be any beginner English class is much more.
The English has become like a global language.
Dr. Faraz, education chair here at the Provincial Council building downtown.
Yes, Badr?
She's playing tennis.
She's playing tennis. Very good.
These students work here at what's a lot like a city hall. The State Department chipped in a microgrant to help create this class, but turn back the page to October.
The situation was like, I can describe just like something similar to the Judgment Day.
And you'll see, coming to work here takes a steady hand.
Let me describe it this way. It was a mixture of water, blood, and gravel.
The damage is still visible here on the roof from the car bomb that exploded around here in October. It was a monstrous one, leaving a huge crater in the side of the street just out there, and they're still cleaning up the damage months and months afterwards.
Unfortunately, till now, there is people who are missing in action, and we couldn't find their bodies.
Amar?
Terrorists don't want to see this government work.
The goal for them is like to prevent us from doing our job over here.
But the classes and the work continue here for these men, women, and children.
We know that we are daily targets, but we do our job day by day.
But still, they've got big political problems here. The biggest one is in March, the people of Iraq elected a new prime minister, or so they thought. They cast their ballot, and still months and months later, here we are, and they're still trying to figure out who won that election. That kind of thing makes a voter feel like they don't count. But the people of Iraq are resilient. For instance, there is a group of people who live just south of here in the marshlands who Saddam tried to wipe off the face of the earth by using water as a weapon of mass destruction. Coming up, you're going to meet one man who fought the dictator and won. But at what cost? This is Assignment Iraq. And we're back. My name's Dave Malkoff. I am here in the country of Iraq, digging up stories and getting into some pretty crazy places like this. This is the Al Salam Palace, one room of Saddam Hussein's old palace. I want to show you this over here. This is some pretty shoddy construction. You can just pull this building apart. You know why? Because this was built during the sanctions and post the sanctions, so he was pretty much stealing from his own people to build ornate palaces like this for himself and his friends. Another story about people rising above Saddam. There is a marshland here. It's just south of here. Iraq's not all a desert. It's bigger than the Everglades. The people who live there trace their roots to before the beginning of recorded history. Let me introduce you to one of those guys.
You see, my story is very lovely story.
And it's a story that starts 4,000 years ago when the ancient Sumerians first settled the wetlands between the Tigris and Euphrates. We're flying over some marshes here in southern Iraq, home to a people known as the Marsh Arabs. This is where Jassim al-Assadi was born into a way of life unchanged by time.
First, I opened my eyes on the waters and open sky and trees and grasses and water buffalo.
But then, in 1991, Saddam Hussein lashed out against the Marsh Arabs, literally moving the rivers away from their home.
The marshes became drained completely. 2 years, all the marshes became like a desert.
It took 12 dry and deadly years and the fall of Saddam before Jassim could help his people flood the marshes once again.
When they cut the dike, the water go on in the marshes.
But today, there's a new enemy, drought.
Nature Iraq, my organization, have some solves, some solutions.
He's brought Iraqi officials from Baghdad down here to the marsh to talk about refilling what was lost here. Then finally, on May 25th of this year,
they complete the connection between the east and the west.
This way of life is slowly returning back to Jassim's waterlogged school days.
There is students, teachers, and snacks, fish, and pets.
In the water underneath your desk?
Yes, in the water under the desk. Yes, of course, of course.
But there are still troubles here in the reeds of southern Iraq. Freedom and democracy are not going to easily arrive here on some kind of western wind. To understand the entire country's future, you need to understand what happened here under Saddam Hussein. The hallmark of his tyranny was always fear. And it goes back to just days after he took power in the summer of 1979, when he called a meeting of his Ba'ath Party leadership. Saddam announced, "There are traitors among us in this room." And he called them out one by one. Soldiers hauled more than 60 men out of the room, soon to be executed. Now, historians generally recognize this plot as completely fabricated by Saddam Hussein. This reign of terror continued for a generation. Citizens who spoke out against Saddam were ratted out by their neighbors and family, and they were tortured, some even killed. Someone was always listening to your conversations in Iraq. As for government, the entire country was micromanaged from Baghdad by the will of this one man. Every decision came from the top. The price for original thought or dissent was swift, and it was brutal. Changing that culture will take some time, but it's happening. Iraq has 18 provinces, all with their own local government. We're in Hilla, the capital of Babel province, where the U.S. Department of State and USAID are helping the Iraqis move past the era of Saddam, rooting out corruption, making sure the government is simply working for the people. Recently, they did a survey around Babel province asking these 1.3 million people what they want from their government. The people want more reliable electricity, more night guards, smart identification cards, better hospitals, and better schools.
I'm Tim Bourne. I'm the USAID representative to the Babel Provincial Reconstruction Team. I've been here for 2 years. We bring together our Iraqi partners to just talk about what we're doing and where we're headed and make sure our programs are coordinated. This local government is trying much harder to connect to the people and to govern responsibly. I think that we are seeing improvements in Babel. I can only speak for Babel. I think things are getting better on the corruption front as well as on the governance in general front.
Your stuff? But you got Bill! You could just declare the entire country one giant archaeological site. There could be extraordinary finds that are just still undiscovered that we just don't know what they're going to be.
That's next, but first, this short break. You're watching Assignment Iraq. We'll be right back. Very few American journalists have been past this locked door lately. This is the National Museum of Iraq. It's long been one of the world's archaeological treasures.
Well, my name is Diane Seaver, and I work for the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. I'm the Cultural Heritage Program Manager.
Not that I'd make a big deal out of it, but she has been called the female Indiana Jones.
I am an archaeologist by trade.
Diane took us into the recently renovated Assyrian Hall.
What you're seeing here is from a site called Dur Shurakan, or modern-day Khorsabad.
These massive reliefs were inside King Sargon II's palace, dating back to around 705 BC.
And what you're seeing here is the king in the middle that is taking homage and gifts from his people. This is ancient Iraq, Mesopotamia as it was called.
Now, beyond that series of bank vault type doors is this, a hallway full of hundreds of thousands of ancient items that aren't even on display yet. This is the area no one gets to see. It's behind lock and key. And there's a reason for that.
Out of 15,000 artifacts that were stolen, we have restored about a third of those thanks to Interpol and other countries that have helped us.
Looters raided the museum during the 2003 invasion.
These are compact storage units.
7 years later, museum and U.S. Embassy are still working to secure the human story, the way it was first told.
Mainly cuneiform tablets, but there are also some cylinder seals that are stored in here.
The U.S. and Italian governments are paying for the restoration of the other halls and the roof. The Islamic hall here is almost complete.
This is a stone altar from the Atabic period.
Other countries have expressed an interest in the museum because it's not just Iraq's history here. it's yours as well.
You have the wheel, language, astronomy, astrology was all created here.
30 minutes in a chopper, an hour in an MRAP, and a 15-minute walk gets you here.
The thought of stepping in great civilizations that walked these same paths.
The Lion of Babylon was supposed to protect this ancient city.
Uncovered by the Germans in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
But now it's up to modern-day governments to preserve what's left.
Like this column is original.
But there's plenty of reconstruction here.
You can just tell by the color, the shape, and one of the biggest problems is down here.
That's water damage from below.
In the late 1800s, early 1900s, all this was all underground. And as they're excavating down, they're uncovering all these incredible animal figures. To your left here, you have the original processional way.
The original road from the time of Nebuchadnezzar II.
We're talking about 605 BC.
Alexander the Great lived and died here. Hammurabi left his mark.
Law codes.
And then there's those Bible stories about a stairway to heaven.
What the Tower of Babel actually was describing was a ziggurat. And ziggurats were
pyramids.
But pyramids, not the straight, smooth-sided pyramids you think of when you think of Egypt. Think of more something from the South American continent of a stepped pyramid.
Yeah. Just don't look for the Tower of Babel today.
And it's gone because a lot of people took the bricks, the local people took the bricks to build their houses.
The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
Allegedly, Nebuchadnezzar II built the Hanging Gardens for his wife, who was from the Persian mountains and was missing her homeland. So he built it so she would feel more at home. There is evidence of that. But there's also scholars that debate that it was actually in Nineveh where they found similar structures.
Now, time and heat,
it can get up to 120, 130 degrees.
Are quickly silencing the past.
Iraq has the potential to be one of the biggest tourist draws in the world.
Think of it, Iraq, vacation destination, that's Diane's dream.
Who knows what's underneath the ground?
Most of that ground has never been sifted through by archaeologists. Now they have their chance both down in Babylon and in the city of Ur. Hidden by centuries of sand.
You know, the Iraqi government, how many years not putting walkway or fence, just PRT.
Is the biblical city of Ur, where 4,000 years ago,
they call it the golden age of Ur.
Through one of the oldest known archways in the world.
From here to here, original. And the name of the temple, Eid Dub Lal Mak.
You'll find a place where humans took a monumental leap.
The kind of the writing here, cuneiform. Cuneiform is the second oldest written language in the world.
For archaeologists, Ur is one of the digs on the planet. Look at any of the 3 big holy books, the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, and you'll read stories that happened right here in Ur. The ancient Sumerians lived here and worshipped the moon as a god.
And why they choose the moon in Ur? Because Ur that time surrounded by water. So in the night, when looking for water, see the picture of the moon in the water at night. When looking up, see the picture of the moon up. So they thought that's a great thing because they found the picture of the moon more one place. Found the picture of the moon up, and they found it also in the water.
Makes sense enough. Our guide here in Ur is Iraqi historian Daif Mosam. He has been involved in this archaeological dig for your whole life, basically, right?
Yes, sir.
You may have met him when we did a live television report from the Great Ziggurat of Ur, one of the world's first pyramids. And it's here in Iraq. But for too many years, Saddam Hussein banned archaeologists from stepping onto this holy ground.
He closed the area 4 years.
Slowly now, it's opening to tourists with help from the joint Italian-U.S. Provincial reconstruction team.
The tombs, you want to see the tombs?
Over there in the distance, archaeologists found the skeletons of 2,000 common people.
But near the grass, the excavator found tomb of a queen called Queen Shabad. Second name, Queen Puapi. Around tomb of a Queen Shabad, the excavators found skeletons for 59 persons. Skeletons for the servant, guards of the queen.
King Shurgi was buried down here in the bat cave.
There on the roof of the tomb.
Yeah, there's the bats, but I had another question. What happened to the servants when the king died?
When the king died, the servant and the guards of him drank poison.
Talk about a cruddy retirement plan.
They want to die with the king.
Those mass suicides happened up these 122 partially reconstructed steps.
But the top of the ziggurat original.
Now, as cool as this is, and the wind does cool things down up here, the origins of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism come back to this one house. According to a lot of scholars, this is where the prophet Abraham lived before he moved on to the land of Canaan. All those religions started right here.
This is the house of Abraham al-Khalili, the father of all prophets.
A great or holy place for all the religions.
Not all Bible scholars agree on the exact location.
Most of the excavators, they thought kitchen, because the excavator found here smoke, and he thought that here unit surface.
But the evidence and the timing sure work out.
2025, 1763 years BC, that time, same time with the Prophet Abraham.
Today in Iraq, there's a new generation coming up. These kids are globally connected, they're tech savvy, and one other thing, they want to come live with you, in your house, with your kids. That's in a moment. This is Assignment Iraq. Welcome back, Dave Malkoff in the Green Zone, Baghdad, Iraq. What do you know about Iraqis? What are they like? Have you ever met one? Well, honestly, a lot of Iraqis have never met an American family either. That is until the U.S. Embassy had this idea to send a bunch of bright Iraqi kids to the United States to live with American families. Their heads were full of stereotypes. Oh, they knew exactly what to expect of you. Or did they?
I'm Harith. I'm a student in medical school.
My mainstay was in Montana.
I've been to D.C., to New York, and to New Mexico.
We went for 6 weeks program in the U.S.
Yeah, Cleveland rocks.
Most of the Americans, they don't know Iraqi well.
I mean, what's Iraq? It's like just a war zone and some crazy people, you know?
They're living with camels and...
That's it. And what's the American people? They only like wars.
All I knew about the U.S. people, about TV and TV shows, media, all those things.
You know, using drugs, you know, shooting guns in the street, gang people, whatever.
Probably America was not a very safe place.
All you see is this misleading image of both sides.
When we discussed more, we found out that we have much things in common.
Our exchange program was about leadership and community service.
Actually, we started to act to bring the experience we learned there back home.
Like Rotary Club, something we never heard of. I mean, I would never think of such a thing before.
What I like about the United States is really the diversity, and exactly the food is one part of them.
I heard about sushi.
We are not used to all of this kind of food.
I lost a lot of money on sushi, and it wasn't good. Just raw fish. I mean, for God's sake, why you call it sushi and some fancy name? I mean,
I think the next generation is totally, at least I'm saying, I hope it will be totally different.
You have internet and you have Facebook.
Like when I went there, it was really different. They were like very helping and welcoming people, even though I'm an Iraqi guy.
They said that their thinking or the image of Iraq was a little bit changed in their eyes.
Well, I'd like to say that we are all people living on the same planet.
It's a good thing to see when you go like out of your bubble. Like I was in a bubble and I went out and I see like all humans are the same.
All over the places, like in Iraq and in the US.
So where do they get those crazy ideas about us? Well, you know where. From watching TV, of course. Not every American teenager is Bart Simpson. You know what I've noticed? That every single place in Iraq, every home, even in the poorest slums, they all have satellite TV. Now, most of it's pirated, of course, but they are watching and they are learning. The internet can't be far behind. Oh dear, these Iraqi kids.
This is American stuff, it's new to here.
Are getting their first exposure to the Western world.
This is a new.
And it goes way beyond playing with a real fire truck.
So this is it then, is what you're saying?
Yes. Locked away in a State Department closet here in Babel province are 4 laptop computers designed just for kids, and everybody wants one.
So I said, I'll go get you one.
The idea here is 1 laptop per child.
When did we make the order? Around 2008?
At least 2 years ago, the order went out for 8,000 of these laptops for 400 schools in Babel province. The hardware is kid-proof and cheap to construct. The software, including video chat, is free and open source, making each laptop affordable to hand out in the developing world.
Yeah, I think it's about a little less than $300 per computer.
The State Department paid $275 per laptop. But right now, all 8,000 are sitting in a cargo container down at the port of Basra, locked up and switched off.
It's a logistical problem after that.
Iraq is home to 31 million. More than a third of them are 14 years old or younger, and very few have access to computers, let alone the internet.
We're starting them with 8,000 computers, which is a lot of computers, but not enough still, sadly.
But soon, these kids will enter a larger world of instant information. All they got today was the fire truck.
Say goodbye, thank you. Shukran. Hi, shukran. Okay, shukran.
High-tech tools in a country that's still surrounded by these giant blast walls everywhere because of the security situation. When we come back, personal stories. One from an American soldier who's here missing his family back in California, and another from an Iraqi police chief who's about to lose 2 vital tools any cop needs. Both of these men are here in this country fighting terrorism. Assignment Iraq continues on the other side of the break. Welcome back to the land of the date palm, Baghdad, Iraq. My name is Dave Malkoff, spending 30 days here in this country. As you know, the United States has a vested interest in what happens in Iraq. The theory goes like this, you've heard it before: if democracy works here in Iraq, it may spread throughout the Middle East. Now, what I've learned here is that is the oversimplification of the century. This region is, in a word, complicated. There's so many moving parts here, and the American military in Iraq is just one piece of that huge machine. Here's one soldier's story.
As you can see behind us, the Iraqi army vehicles starting to queue up.
Basra is right here between Iraq and another hard place, Iran. We're about 15 miles from the border.
Showing up in MRAPs, in Humvees. It looks aggressive.
This is an MRAP. It's a bigger version of the Humvee, basically. It's better armor.
It's the only way U.S. officials can roll through these rough streets with some level of security.
Basically bodyguards.
Army Staff Sergeant Jason Grant is on his 4th tour.
It's always dangerous, but it's gotten a lot better.
Grant's team and my body armor make it possible to leave the base today.
So there's not that many California folks out here.
Just a couple of LA guys out for a drive.
On Slauson Alviso by Slauson Crenshaw.
Grant's been in some bad situations here in Basra, but back in LA, his dad is fighting in a hospital bed. It's cancer, and it's bad.
He's good spirits, but he's not doing too well.
Even if he wanted to get home in a hurry, he couldn't. This place is extremely hard to get to and just as hard to get back. But you know what? There's got to be a TV in that hospital room, right?
I just want to tell him I love him, hang in there, and as soon as I'm able to come home, I'll be home to help you out and to get you through this. Can I say one thing?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
I do want to just say hello to my wife and my son and my daughter. She's 2 months old, Ariana, my son Dayton, and my wife Lindsay. I love you guys, and I miss you very much.
Okay, it's about 9 p.m. here in Babel province. I'm learning this happens more often than you'd like. I just heard 4 explosions, and I'm sheltering in place just like they'd like you to do. And you either run to a bunker or you shelter in place. You're supposed to get down on the floor. I feel a little silly. I feel like that World War II duck and cover turtle. But this is the reality here on the ground. There's nothing I can do, so I figured I'd explain it to you on this little still camera here.
What I did not know at the time is how serious that attack actually was. As I was recording that video, medics were responding to an area where a U.S. soldier had just been killed. That nighttime attack in Babel province took the life of U.S. Army Specialist Faith Hinckley from Colorado Springs, this high school cheerleader who surprised her family by signing up for the Army back in 2007, was killed less than 400 feet from my bunk. Faith's family and friends quickly set up a memorial page on Facebook. The newspaper back home interviewed her grandmother, who remembered her granddaughter as a sweet and gentle girl. Now, she was just 23 years old. Many of her fellow soldiers here on the base were literally packing their bags to leave, to go home. Medics flew her to Baghdad, where she died that Saturday night. Now, 2 other soldiers were also around Faith at the time. They were hurt as well. Now, even though I do know the general location where that rocket hit, I can't, and more precisely, I won't tell you where that hit, because that's the information that will help insurgents target. What I can show you is this. This is a concrete and sandbag bunker. This is, if you aren't in your civilian housing unit, where you should shelter in place, and this is where a lot of people did shelter in place for about an hour before that all clear was notified. Now, as for the investigation, the Iraqis are taking the lead on this investigation, as they normally do, with the Americans helping them out. What they're looking for is possibly a 107mm rocket. Let me show you a picture of one of these 107mm rockets. This is launched from a metal launching platform. So what they'll have is some fingerprint evidence possibly on that 107mm launching platform, and possibly some rockets that failed to launch. So they'll take all this physical evidence and put it into a national database. All this national database information will be available, so if anybody gets picked up anywhere in Iraq, they can link them back to this. And that wasn't even the first time we were attacked during my month in Iraq. It happened over and over again, like this time at Talil Air Base. It's still dangerous. People are still dying, even though the American military is drawing down.
Join the discussion. Let us know what you think about the war, America's involvement in the Middle East, and the future for the people of Iraq. Photos, behind-the-scenes details, and links are posted at ktla.com/Dave. Post your comments after the show. Assignment Iraq continues after this short break.
Good evening from Camp Stryker in Baghdad. Let me explain why we're here. I've been selected by the State Department to come here and teach journalism classes to local Iraqi journalists. While I'm here, I have the opportunity to report on this huge story. For 7 years, the American military has been here in Iraq. Now the drawdown is beginning, and the civilian end is ramping up. The State Department is helping the Iraqis stand on their own 2 feet. That's a huge story, and we're here to cover it. But how did we get here? It was a long journey. This journey started Friday, wheels up from Washington Dulles. But as a civilian guest of the State Department, I cannot fly directly into Baghdad. I have to fly across Iraq into Kuwait. At this point, I've been traveling for about 19 hours here in Kuwait City. It's about 120 degrees Fahrenheit, but we're nowhere near our destination. We're on our way to the base, and then it's on to Baghdad once we get a Mil Air flight out. Ali Al Salim Air Base is where I stay overnight in a tent. My passport, however, goes all the way back to Kuwait City for the visa. In the morning, we reunite with seconds to spare, and it's go time. We're aboard a U.S. Embassy-run C-130 with room for 60, including State Department Public Diplomacy Officer Cynthia Hogel. We're going the same place. Baghdad.
I wanted to bring a U.S. journalist to teach the Iraqis what it is to work in an open and free media, something they're just beginning to have the opportunity to do.
We met with dozens and dozens of Iraqi reporters all over the southern end of the country. First in Basra, where I taught a few hours in the classroom. Then we actually went out and shot a story together. The Iraqis are truly hungry for this kind of training and information after going decades without access to modern tools of the trade. There was also a large class in Dhikar province where the reporters actually interviewed me for the local news. Then there was a 3-hour convoy to Mathana province in a Humvee where I taught a class to the local journalists and another to a group of youth parliament members. These are students who want to work in the new Iraqi government someday. We also brought some modern-day storytelling techniques to Babel province. This class was actually at the site of the Babel ruins. There's a conference center there. Baghdad was our last stop for these classes. Here, the journalists asked me not to show their faces on TV, so I've blurred them out here. They face the most risk of any reporter in Iraq. While I was in Iraq, a suicide bomber drove into the Al Arabiya network television building and blew his car bomb up, killing a few employees and injuring 16 others. Now, despite this risk, they all still come to work and report the news every day. Now, they have whole television stations to transmit their stories to the people in Iraq. I'm thousands of miles from home, so how do we get the stories back to you live from Iraq?
Live, I'm Dave Malkoff on assignment Iraq. Michael, back to you.
All right. Well, that story starts back in Hollywood.
What I'm wearing on my back is basically a satellite truck like this one over here, but it's pared down. In today's 21st century technology, we have everything that this sat truck has on my back. This is the heart of the system, the Intersat B-GAN by Hughes. This is basically my satellite antenna. I'm pointing up to a geosynchronous satellite that is just about where Phil, the photographer, is standing. I'm going to turn it on right here. That's actually a really good signal that I just got right there.
And that would be good to go for our first test.
You know, I've been fascinated by this stuff my whole life. I've always wanted to do this kind of foreign correspondence stuff. One of the most important things for any democracy is a free press. It's an honor for me to go over there and talk to these journalists and teach them and also learn from them. We've been in this war for 7 years. What happens next?
This is how we roll in Baghdad in a U.S. Army Stryker. But more and more, the fight against terrorism isn't in vehicles like this, but normal police cruisers. These feet march on the front lines against terrorism every day. 10 years ago, Colonel Thamar Sadoun Ali was tracking arms smugglers when the bad guys opened fire and he was hit several times in the leg.
The bones were almost destroyed.
It almost looks like it's breadcrumbs. Almost looks like breadcrumbs inside the x-ray.
And it's just getting worse. Now he's in a race against time to fix the leg.
If I take off for a few months, terrorism will advance, especially in my sector.
That's where LAPD comes in.
My name is Richard Davis, and I spent just a little over 26 years there.
The reverse time has started for my treatment.
He would be the equivalent on our department in Los Angeles of a deputy chief.
Iraqi doctors don't have the technology to fix the chief's leg, but Indian doctors have offered to do it for free. Just getting them to India is the problem.
Because incidentals aren't paid for. I mean, who's going to cover that cost?
Police are police. Doesn't really matter where they are.
LAPD is now asking for donations from people like you back in LA.
And I know they may be asking, well, why this person over someone else? And my view is, well, why not? He's been one of the key players in this at great personal risk to himself. And I think in the long run, it gives meaning to the sacrifices that our troops have made here.
This one man has influence over a large portion of Baghdad province. Keeping him on patrol and helping stabilize this community could cost as little as $15,000.
When that day comes, I'll come back as a tourist. Doc will come with me, and we'll all go for a jog and around the block.
Iraq is a country that is constantly changing. If we told this story a month ago or told it a month from now, we'd be telling a very different story. But the future is up to the people of Iraq and how they decide to go forward with their country. That is a story that is yet to be told. From Baghdad, I'm Dave Malkoff. Good night.